What's going on, guys? Welcome to the third edition of the WCW Nitro Podcast. I'm your host. I'm Notorious One. I am Dom, and I am here with my man all the way from Delaware. I am here with BDC. Brian, what's going on, man? How you doing?
What's good, man? I'm good. Been a long day at work. A little bit of snow. Got home, ended that biz.
I feel you. We don't have any snow on the ground. They're talking about sometime next week, but it doesn't matter. What does matter is September 18th of 1995. We're going to take it
Yeah.
back to episode 3 of WCW Nitro. And we're going to kick it
Yeah.
off with Eric Bischoff, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Steve Mongo McMichael with Pepe in
With
Mongo's hands.
because at this point we have to acknowledge Pepe
Yes,
because
acknowledge
well,
Pepe.
they did. Yeah. It you start to see the forming of exactly how they're gonna mesh as a group. There's a lot of Bobby the Brain being simply Bobby the Brain, but there is also a lot of Mongo McMichael digging at Bobby the Brain Heenan. Almost. I won't say bullying because it wasn't quite it, but he was always throwing jabs at Bobby the Brain,
Yeah, he was.
and and Eric is the guy that's just kind of listening to both of them. He the best scenario to give you is like if you ever watch Inside the NBA, Mongo McMichael and Bobby the Brain Heenan are the equivalent of Charles Barkley and Shaq, and Eric Bischoff is Ernie Johnson. That's pretty much the scenario. He just
Basically.
kind of sits back.
That's a good scenario right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
definitely see that.
yeah.
All right, well, the show kicks off. We see Mean Gene Okerlund backstage, and we see an ambulance backing up. And then the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, he comes out with the Giant. So this is the Giant's debut on WCW Nitro.
Yep.
And to sum up who the Giant is, which is the Big Show in WWE later on in his career, he, do you remember this? And then he had Andre the Giant's tights right in front of
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan, and
Yep.
that's how we got Andre the Giant. Jimmy, that's Andre.
Yeah. Yep. And they made it a point to reference his father.
Yeah, they want to say Andre, but
Yeah, they can't say Andre, but they would say his father.
yes,
And Giant came in and he was just this huge monster when he first got in WCW, first got into wrestling, really. But was unlike Andre or unlike any real Giants before him, outside of probably Giant Gonzalez, was really in great shape for his size.
yes,
So he wasn't like just this big oofing character. He was just a trim, muscle bound dude who just so happened to be 7 foot plus.
yep,
And at least in these WCW days, he really, really showcased the type of talent he had. Which, as he went through WWE and those WWE years, he was not that guy anymore. He picked up weight. He started having health problems. So, but this literally WCW is probably the best you get of Paul White or the Giant in his career, essentially.
I made the claim on the It Doesn't Matter podcast. I said I would take the Giant's career over the Big Show's career any day.
Oh, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. The Big Show's career was longer, but the Giants was more effective.
Yes, that's for sure.
Simply put, the Giants' career was more effective. By the time Big Show got to the E, they were struggling to find things to do with him. And then, as I said, then the health problems came, and then the 82 different heel turns that he took in the last several years of his time there, where it seemed like every other week he was either a face or a heel. He was just switching back and forth like you're watching a tennis match. So I definitely agree. He was definitely better overall as the Giant in WCW than he ever was as Big Show in WWE, and sure as hell better than he was as Paul White in AEW.
That's for sure. So at this time, the Giant makes the claim. He said Hulk Hogan isn't immortal anymore, that he is immortal. Then they show the clip from Fall Brawl when he hopped over the top rope on the War Games cage.
Yep.
And he choked out Hogan. He choked him out, and then he, like, grabbed him by the neck, and he just, like, wrung his neck. Oh, man.
Yeah. So
he should have did that move more often.
Yeah, so well, I'll note a few things first, because the first part of that highlight was when Giant came in the special Dungeon of Doom monster truck, because at the time WCW had a partnership with Bigfoot, so they had a custom designed Bigfoot monster truck designed in the form of Dungeon of Doom, which later they did some 3D graphics, the 3D stuff with to make it really look like a Dungeon of Doom monster truck. But at the time, it was simply a truck with a paint job. Big Show comes flying in his monster truck. Hogan's on this special black motorcycle that was given to him by the Hulkamaniacs, but really was given to him by Orange County Customs. He jumps off. Giant mows it over. He destroys it. Rides back and forth on it. Hulk Hogan is trying to reach for him. Can't reach him because he's in a monster truck. And then it flashes to when the Giant comes out later that night. And the first thing that was impressive was he gets in the cage and immediately he grips onto the top of the cage and he hops the buckle and over. Then he leapfrogs from the first ring to the second ring over the ropes, and then literally just his whole hand is just like around Hogan's neck. Hogan tries to fight it off. He says none of that. Grabs him again, and then he pulls what I call the Zeus, because when Zeus was in WWE, he did the same thing to Hogan. He goes and he literally you grab here, and then you grab the back of the neck, and then you just... And head goes bobbling like a bobblehead, and he goes down.
I bet you a lot of brothers want to do that to him now.
Oh, absolutely. Like they probably have a line for him right now. But yeah, that it showed how impressive the Giant was, not in terms of just power, but his athletic ability. Because... And I mean, that was a lot. He showcased that a lot in the earlier days of WCW, him hopping ropes and all things that you would never expect somebody his size to do, and he did it effortlessly. But yeah, he talked about he was the true immortal. I guess, Hogan's in the hospital. No one knows how he's doing. Whether his head is completely spun around or not. No one knows. But the Giant did a number on him. Kevin Sullivan was literally just there because Hogan had been beating on him a little bit towards the end of the match. So Kevin Sullivan was literally just there watching the carnage. But it was a very strong debut for the Giant. Very strong debut.
That's damn right.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get into the opening match of the night. The first match of the night, we finally have a tag team match in 3 episodes. It's the American Males, the former guests on the It Doesn't Matter podcast, my man Scotty Riggs and Buff Marcus Alexander Bagwell. And they're taking on the Blue Bloods of Lord Steven Regal and Sir Bobby Eaton. But when Bobby Eaton was making his entrance, we didn't see Regal. And Bobby Eaton, he got his ass whipped by Stevie Ray and Booker T. They just beat the hell out of Bobby Eaton right now. And then Booker T gets on the mic. Booker T and Stevie Ray are your tag team champions. They won the tag team titles the night before at Fall Brawl 1995. And they said, we are the World Tag Team Championship champions, and we're going to give the American Males a title shot. So here we go. We got the American Males taking on Harlem Heat with Sister Sherry. And Harlem Heat, they was giving it to them boys. Yeah. They were doing the damn thing the whole damn time.
Yeah. First things first. They did something out of Street Fighter when Akuma takes out Bison. He just showed up out of nowhere. People just went down, and then there they were. It was hilarious.
Oh my gosh!
But once you get into the match, they were, and unfortunately, it's it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Podcast friend Scotty Riggs, who was getting it dealt, he was getting dealt with.
Yep.
They were beating him down. They were very dominant in the match. When the time came that they were finally able to get the hot tag over to Marcus Alexander Bagwell, he comes out, he mounts a little offense, but then Booker was like, "Nah, I'm not doing that," and he started roughing him up too. So, but the crazy thing was it looked like there was a point where he had Marcus Alexander Bagwell by the arms, and he's holding him like this, and Sherry gets up like she's about to take off her shoe. She's going to rack him over the head, but then Colonel Rob Parker comes down, and apparently there was a storyline about them being lovebirds at Fall Brawl, and he comes down, he taps her on the back, she sees him, and she just falls right in his arms.
She literally just fell. Just let go.
She literally just rolled right back into his arms, and they start making out and shit, and Marcus Alexander Bagwell's like, "Yes, this is my chance." He goes to turn around, and Booker T once again is like, "Nah, bro, it ain't that." And so, but then it was this, like, Bagwell countered a pump handle slam. Yeah. Booker T was going for a pump handle slam, and Marcus Alexander Bagwell he countered it and got the 3 count, and just like that, the American males are your new WCW tag champs.
That's crazy. Your first tag team match,
just like that.
Nitro history, and titles change hands. And then I forgot who was Eric Bischoff. That was a non-sanction. We got to figure it out. So I'm curious to see.
Yeah, that I think that was that Bischoff who said that?
It was either Bischoff or Bobby, one of them.
No, actually, I think it was Mongo who said it. I think Mongo might have said it. And I think Bobby Heenan might have been the one talking about, it doesn't matter, his contract doesn't matter. It is, yeah. So but the match was crazy. Like it did, for no reason did anyone believe that the American males was going to win that match, especially with how the American males was getting dealt. Well, again, Scotty Riggs was getting dealt with most of the time, and even when Bagwell comes in, he was getting dealt with too. So it was more of a shock than anything. But yeah, they're your tag champs. They are celebrating outside of the ring. Booker T and Stevie Ray are in the ring like, what just happened? And that literally was the biggest shock of the night. But it did introduce a theme, which Mongo kept bringing up, because it seemed that everyone that competed the night before in a longer match came into this show and did not do well. We'll continue on down the line, but they did not do well for if they wrestled on this episode. And so after this, there was a promo with once again the 11-time WCW World Champion Ric Flair, where
in the ring with Mean Gene Okerlund.
Yep, he's in the ring with Mean Gene, and he is talking about his match from Fall Brawl, where he calls out Double A Arn Anderson for violating the code of the Four Horsemen by one, bringing the inside stuff out to the public, and then number two, bringing an outsider in the name of Flying Brian, who came in to kind of help out the night before. Basically said he's going to take out Brian Pillman, and then he's going to come in after Double A, and that was that. That was your thing. That was your promo.
Yeah, Flair's pissed off, just like my man BDC said, that, you know, when he get a chance to get his hands on Arn Anderson, that he's gonna chop him so hard that Boomer Esiason's gonna feel it all the way in New York. And Arn Anderson, he's gonna kick your ass. Woo! And my man Flair had the beautiful butterfly robe, the black and white.
Look,
I love that robe.
when I tell you, I will never get enough of these robes. These robes are absolutely outstanding. Um, there's just a regalness to them, which you just can't. You can't. You just can't. They are outstanding, and every time I see one of them, it's just like a throwback. It's literally a throwback, and it's awesome to see. And you know, I'm happy he had them. I know eventually he passed them on to Charlotte, and she had them for a while until she kind of switched off to whatever she has now. But occasionally you see a superstar who has a robe, even though they're not as extravagant as Ric Flair. You had Rude and Gable when they were teaming for a while. They had robes, but like a lot of the tag teams in the '80s had robes or jackets to that effect, which another guy we'll talk about shortly also had what was a very spectacular jacket that harkened as well.
Yes, well, our next match, my man had a robe on, another guy had a jacket. We have Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff with the wonderful jacket and the mirror and the wonderful music and the wonderful theme song.
What was that?
Oh, God, that was terrible.
He literally pulled the narcissist gimmick from WWE and came out to it. That was hysterical.
How he come out with that damn mirror and he ugly as shit? He got a nice physique, but
my man was risen for days. He was like this. He was like,
seriously, he Tyler Breeze before Tyler Breeze. Oh man, well, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, he went against the bad man, Johnny B. Bad, and it's just crazy to see my man Johnny B. Bad in WCW in 1995. Like, you know, in next year in 1996, you know where he ends up back. Well, he ends up in WWF as the Wild Man Mark Mero.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and the thing of it was, he was a pretty decent draw, and WCW, he was a pretty good big attraction.
What was his saying back in the day? I'm so pretty like a little girl, or something like that. He used to say back in the 90s. Oh man.
Yeah, he was like basically he was a Little Richard knockoff. He was a fighting Little Richard. We'll put it like that. He was a fighting Little Richard because he had the hair, the complexion, the makeup, the facial makeup that was just enough that you could tell he was accentuating eyes and stuff. Yep. But dude could fight.
Yeah, he was a real like Golden Glove boxer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, you know the crazy thing is, and I mentioned before in the early days of the Doesn't Matter podcast that one of the biggest works of all time was thinking Mark Mero was a black man. That man's not black whatsoever. He got a good ass tan, man.
Not at all.
Jesus, from New York. He's Jewish.
Yep, and trust me when I tell you, it literally took about 3 years into his WWE run before I realized it. So, yeah, he played that.
Yeah, he did. That's the best work of all time in professional wrestling. All right, well, like you said before, so the night before in Fall Brawl, some of these dudes, they had some stellar matches, long matches, but Johnny B. Bad at this time, he had 9 stitches in one of his eyes.
Yep, he did. He had 9 stitches in the eye. He went through a battle with I think, in fact, it was Pillman he fought. I think he fought Pillman, and they threw down. And he had the 9 stitches in his eye. And to that effect, the stitches did have little effect, not a lot. I don't remember that they were targeted all that much, but they were sure talked about a lot. They kept bringing up that he had these 9 stitches in his eye.
That's Mongo.
Yeah,
Mongo found one fact and just stuck with it the whole time.
Yeah, despite either that or he was throwing jabs at Bobby Heenan. Yeah. So that was his thing. But eventually, went back and forth. The match goes back and forth, and then there was towards the end there was the counters, which basically Paul Orndorff countered pile driver because Johnny B. Bad was trying to put him in a pile driver. He countered by doing back body drop. Johnny B. Bad tried to get him into a sunset flip, and Orndorff just fell on him. So there was your 3 count, despite the fact that Johnny B. Bad's shoulders were never actually on the mat; they were on his legs the entire time. But because the referee was so far out of position, which I never did understand that. Like, he never saw his arms. He was essentially looking at Johnny B. Bad's head and Paul Orndorff's knees the entire time and counting 3, but never seeing his shoulders. Because shoulders were over here, so
yeah, well,
it was crazy.
Well, with that, the only thing that stood out was Mongo's commentary. Hey, Bobby, let me sit on your face like that. Like, what?
Yeah, that was...
What's wrong with you, Mongo?
We will just say that his commentary was colorful.
Very. But you didn't talk about how they kicked off the match. Usually they start off the match with the headlock.
Yeah.
My man just drop kicked Johnny B. Bad right in the leg and start working. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is good. That's a good tactic right there. You don't see that nowadays.
Yeah, they really, they really just the arm and collar tie up, all that other stuff.
Yeah, tie up.
Yeah, Orndorff said bump that.
Yeah. You didn't mention when Johnny B. Bad went to the top rope outside the ring and took Paul Orndorff out. First thing Paul Orndorff did was grab the mirror and he checked himself out. Like, you're still ugly, bro. Dude, you're still ugly.
Look, I will not lie. I missed that because had I noted that, it would have definitely been here. Yeah, I missed that. I will say that Johnny B. Bad's drop kick, that he had a pretty nice drop kick on him too, because Johnny B. Bad at the time, one of the things he was known for was his drop kicks. He threw some hella drop kicks back in the day. So he threw one out Orndorff and didn't exactly help his looks any. And so yeah, but it was a pretty decent match overall. But like you said, there was a few things to point out, and my biggest thing was that how did you count 3 when you never saw his shoulders at all? But
WCW.
We follow a script here.
Yes. Well, after this, we see Macho Man Randy Savage on the beach lifting weights with some unique trunks he had on. And then the Taskmaster comes out in full gimmick on the beach, and then he try to choke him with the weights with the bench. Oh man! And then some random guys and the Nature Boy Ric Flair, who had his trunks on and his boots,
who was fully geared too,
full gear in the tank top to help Macho Man out. And then after this, we see Macho Man in the ring with Mean Gene, and he said he's going to destroy the Taskmaster. And then he said that Hulk Hogan has poor judgment. He's probably talking about real life. And that he was right about Lex Luger and how Lex Luger cheap shot at him at Fall Brawl. Then all of a sudden we get Lex Luger comes out. He confronts the Macho Man, Randy Savage. And he said that, Savage, you are jealous and you're just like me. And you want that WCW title just as well as I do. And Macho Man says, you're right. I do want that title, but when is my time? But all I want to know is you cheap shot at me. And basically, Luger said he's not here to play with little kids. He wants to play with big boys. And Macho Man said, I'm a big boy, ding ding.
Listen, he's not wrong. He did not come there to play with little boys. He went there to play with other guys' wives. And it's ironic that his first real storyline coming back to WCW was with the man whose wife he took. But that's further down the line. But yeah, Macho Man came out. The first thing he said was that while he appreciated Ric Flair helping him, thanks but no thanks. He did not want his help, did not need his help, but he appreciated that he was there. And then he went into talking about how he was going to take out Taskmaster on his own. And like he said, he called out Hogan's Hogan's, I guess, his skills at reading the room and figuring people out. He also indicated that the next three members of the Dungeon of Doom were going to be Jimmy Hart, Sting, and Lex Luger, which caught me by surprise because it was like, first of all, why are you going after Jimmy Hart? Jimmy Hart did nothing. Jimmy Hart did nothing. Jimmy Hart's a manager, but he's going to be part of the Dungeon of Doom. He just went off of that. So, you know, after that and after Lex Luger comes through, says what he has to say, we get into another pre-recorded segment, which we've kind of already mentioned with the monster truck. So, again, Mean Gene, Hulk Hogan outside the arena. It's Hogan and his Hulkamaniacs, which at this time consisted of about 10 to 15 kids and of varying ages. And he's talking about his match at War Games. He's talking about how he's going to handle the Dungeon of Doom, how the Hulkamaniacs are going to do what they're going to do. And again, Dungeon of Doom, monster truck comes through, vroom vroom, takes out the motorcycle, then he comes back later and he takes out Hogan.
That was some good selling by Hogan. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Why? Hey, yo, come on, man.
Yeah, you know, now we're not going to discuss the elephant in the room that his bike's name was Black Beauty. We're going to leave that alone.
Was it? I didn't notice that.
He named the bike Black Beauty. Gonna leave that alone.
That shit was funny when he got pissed off and he threw the helmet at the damn door.
Like he was really gonna do damage to the door. Like, Rah!
I wanted to see how the Giant got in that shit. That's what I wanted to see.
No, what was funny, he was reaching for the Giant's arm, and when the Giant realized he touched him, he was like, slid his arm. I'm like, dude, what do you think he's gonna do to your elbow? What is he gonna do? Punch you in the elbow? What is he gonna do? Yeah, that was. It was comedy with that whole promo. Outside was straight comedy because it was like, Hulk, you see a monster truck, you have a motorcycle. Your first instinct was not to get the motorcycle and take off.
Move, fool!
You jumped out of the way with the kids and let your bike get destroyed. Yeah.
That's some movie type shit right there. Because, you know, a few weeks later, I forgot what pay-per-view it was, they had the monster truck, the Dungeon of Doom truck, and the Hogan truck. They're going back and forth on the rooftop. Next thing you know, the Giant falls off the cliff, and then we'll talk about that later on when we get there. But, oh my goodness. WCW, they were trying everything at that time. They
did everything to try to make their content more outlandish. And the one thing that I forgot to mention when we talked about the Giant was the Giant's first victim was a guy that, if you've seen the first two episodes of Nitro, we've talked about a little more than you probably would regularly realize that we would talk about a referee, because it was Randy Anderson, who was heavily involved in the first week with Hogan when he was pulling Hogan by the hair, and then he was really involved in the match with Luger and Hogan the following week. Well, once again, Randy Anderson, making his paycheck, is involved, although this time he didn't really want to be involved. When the Giant comes out, Randy Anderson's at the door. He's supposed to be manning the door. Well, Giant comes through and basically picks him up like he's like a toy and just tosses him out of the way.
That was the softest choke slam ever. just dumps him right quick on the stairs.
But it was hilarious to me. I was like, damn, Randy Anderson again? This dude, every week this dude is in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Something every week. This time, he got done in though. Like the first 2 weeks, he was doing something. This week, he got something done to him.
Yep.
And but yeah, he gets tossed when the Giant goes into the ring and grabs all that fun stuff. And I still can't talk enough about how leagues different the Giant was in WCW
Nasty.
than he was in WWE. And don't get me wrong, he had his moments.
Mm-hmm.
Had his moments where he really stood out and he really had strong moments within WWE, but there was just so many of them in WCW that he would just never be able to replicate in WWE. There just wasn't any. I mean, I think the only thing I could really think about right off the top of my head that I could think about that really showcased Big Show in a really good light was the match he had with Braun Strowman, where both of them just decided they were going to absolutely ball out, and they were just doing some things that you have never seen big men do in a match against each other, and was one of, I thought, his best matches in WWE. But he literally had matches like that for like 2 to 3 months straight in WCW.
Mm-hmm.
So like he really, I can't stress that enough. And now in AEW, the dude can barely walk. Like I still saw the last image of him I saw when he was standing at the entranceway, and his one leg was straight, his other leg was bowed like this. He had knee braces on both, and his legs still wasn't straight. I'm like, dude, you gotta let it go at this point. Like, dude's gonna end up in a wheelchair before long. That leg's not gonna support him much longer, and he keeps adding on weight, which is not helping.
Captain Insano right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You know.
Yeah, very.
That Giants disease, and just gotta keep the weight off. Keep the weight off, and he should be straight. But it's tough.
Yeah, it's very tough. It's very tough.
Yeah.
Yep.
But all right, our main events. We have Flying Brian Pillman taking on the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And like I said, Ric Flair had the butterfly robe. Flying Brian had his Hollywood Blonde jacket on, but Hollywood Blonde is gone because Stunning Steve Austin, he's gone. He's down the road. He's in ECW at this time.
ECW.
He's trying to find his gimmick.
ECW being Steve-a-mania? Or what? He just was trying to figure it out.
He's trying to figure out. He's trying to figure out where the big boys play.
Yep.
And Ric Flair, he brought the fight to Brian Pillman. He brought it to him.
Yes, he did.
Beating the shit out of Pillman.
Yes, he did.
Flair won with the figure four. How often do you see Ric Flair win the match with a figure four?
Well, these days, like in his last several years, not a whole lot. Like he put it on more or less to try to wear people down, but not really as a finisher much anymore. But back in the 90s, yeah, that figure four was his finisher. It was his finisher. He collected a lot of bodies off of that figure four. He did. And Brian Pillman also. We're not going to bypass the fact that Ric Flair jumped off the top rope and Brian Pillman met his face with a drop kick when he was coming off the top rope. He absolutely met him with a. I was like, he just kicked him in the face coming down with a drop kick. Yeah, he brought it to him, but Pillman had his moments where he brought it back to him. And as I said, I guess it was safe to say it was a double heel turn or a triple heel turn, because at that point it was, I guess, Flair was kind of the heel, Double A was the face,
Pillman was the face, then he turned heel,
and then Pillman turned heel, Double A turned heel, and Flair turned face. So it was like a triple turn.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen often these days. But yeah, he went ahead and he ended Pillman with that figure four. And then he came out and he talked more mess about Double A.
Double A. Yeah. It's not tonight. It's going to be next Monday night. And you're going to get your ass kicked.
Yep. He absolutely just... He talked his shit, and that's the best way.
And that was it. That was your show.
Yeah,
That was your Monday night WCW Monday Nitro.
yeah. Now there was some other stuff that happened towards the end. Like they were trying it. I guess the best way to say it is they were trying to drum up some extra shit at the end where they were like, "Oh, there's something happening in the back." Okay, we didn't see it. They didn't.
They ain't show nothing.
They didn't mention anything about it. It's like they said there's something in the back, and then they kept talking about the card for next week. Then they even forgot to mention one of the matches on the card because there was 4 matches on the card for next week. Only 3 of them was mentioned. The last one they were just mind you, it was Lex Luger. But Mike, we'll just go ahead and.
No, they mentioned the Lex Luger one.
They mentioned it unless they mentioned it first because they certainly didn't mention it last.
Well, they showed the graphic. Of Lex Luger.
They showed the graphic and there was nothing there. They had already just moved on to something else. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I got the card for next week for our next show, episode 4, and we got Alex Wright taking on Disco Inferno.
Das Wunderkind, and this is Disco Inferno's debut.
We have Kurosawa with Colonel Robert Parker taking on Sergeant Craig Pittman.
Yep.
Not looking forward to that one.
Yep, absolutely not.
We have the Taskmaster with the Zodiac taking on the Macho Man Randy Savage,
a.k.a. Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
And in your main event, we have Meng taking on Lex Luger.
Whoo, shit.
What a show.
Meng representing the Dungeon of Doom at that time, I think. He's always a savage no matter where he's at. He's just that guy you'd never want to meet in a dark alley. You never want to meet him anywhere where it's dark. Period. Yep. End of story. If it's dark, you don't want to see Meng there. Just is what it is. We'll say the commentating team did a very good job of mentioning where the event took place. As in, they didn't mention it.
Usually I announce it. I didn't know where it was. So.
Yeah. So it was in Johnson City, Tennessee, and Ric Flair mentioned the city.
Freedom Hall.
It was at Freedom Hall in Johnson City, Tennessee, which was not mentioned at all. So you had to be there, I guess, or you had to look it up on Wikipedia to find it because they didn't tell you anything. So I will break into this. What do you think was your best moment of the night? If there was a best moment of the night, what was your best moment of the night?
My best moment of the night would probably have to be... Ooh. That's kind of tough. I'll probably have to say that Hogan segment with the monster truck. For me, the show was nothing special. This episode was nothing special. The first 2 episodes was pretty good. There's a lot of hype, and they cooled off big time this episode right here.
Fell all the way off.
Seriously.
The best moment of the night for me was the end.
When the show ended, or the main event?
When the show ended. That was the best part of the show, was when it ended.
Yeah, because it was a quick 45 minutes. Like,
yeah,
all right, this ain't bad right here.
There was nothing to the episode that said, this is a standout. And especially when you had the first 2 go like they went, there was a little more fanfare, was a little more action. You had a lot more going on. But it almost seems like it was like they literally just ran out of steam. They ran out of steam by this 3rd episode. It was like, okay, we're in a town where nobody knows where we are. We don't even know where the hell we're at. Somebody will figure that out later. And they figured that the fallout from Fall Brawl will be enough to carry the episode, and it just was not.
No.
Because literally, outside of that match with the Hulkamaniacs versus the Dungeon of Doom, no other match was talked about unless it was Harlem Heat. Harlem Heat came up with the titles. They had to explain why that was. Johnny B. Bad, they had to explain why he had the stitches in his eye. Other than that, you didn't know anything else about the night.
You can't say... You can't even call it a taped show because of the results from the night before. So, yeah, I don't know.
Like they didn't. There was there was plenty more matches. They only talked about the Pillman match because of Johnny B. Bad's eye. He only talked about the main event because Hogan's head got twisted off like a soda, like a Coke bottle kind of cap.
Yep, yep.
And I mean, and the thing of it is the Giant debuted, and they didn't even bring him to Nitro. They didn't even bring him to Nitro.
Like
They had Taskmaster. They had
event.
Taskmaster up there, jumping Randy the Macho Man Savage in sand. But you don't bring the Giant. You didn't bring the Giant at all. You didn't bring it. In fact, you brought no one else from the Dungeon of Doom. Yeah. After the week before, the Dungeon of Doom was imprinted all over the second half of the show.
Yep, yep. I don't know, man, but it was interesting. It was an interesting show, and it's probably the worst Nitro as of now, the third episode in. But we're gonna see how it plays out next week.
Yeah, I mean, based on the card, I'm not looking for much. And I say that because there's not a whole lot of, and this is your big show. This is your big show, but no Sting. You got Macho Man. You got Lex Luger, who just came back. You're basically not carrying the Ric Flair storyline at all. It just seems like everything's all over the place at this point, and it's like for a show that has so much talent, you could see why they needed to go to 2 hours immediately. Because in 1 hour, they can't figure out how to do shit.
Well, all wrestling fans know they got dark matches before the main show takes place. I'm going to tell you what took place.
Okay.
They had the State Patrol, Lieutenant James Earl, and Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker taking on the stud stable of Colonel Rob Parker and Dick Slater. So Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater. They had Macho Man take on the Zodiac. Arn Anderson taking on Dave Sullivan. And Eddie Guerrero taking on Dean Malenko. Dark match. Those four are dark matches. And I only had maybe two of them for a dark match. And then I would take two of those matches, put them on the main card.
Yeah, I would absolutely. I would have replaced. No offense, Rick. I would have replaced Ric Flair and Bobby and Brian Pillman. I would have replaced that match.
I'd have left that.
No, I would have. I think the match just basically was a chop fest. That's what the match was. The match was a chop fest. I don't think it did anything to further the storyline. It literally just got Brian Pillman beat. That was it. It didn't do anything to really further the storyline with Double A. There was no Double A at all. It was just Ric Flair going out there beating up Brian Pillman. That was it.
Yeah.
Did nothing to further the storyline. I could have went without that.
I don't know why they had Harlem Heat take out the Blue Bloods. Why not take out the baby faces?
They weren't putting I guess they weren't putting the straps on the Blue Bloods. And besides, Akuma takes out Bison. Akuma doesn't take out Ken or Ryu.
This is true.
So, and the thing of it was that was something that kind of bothered me too, because this was Harlem Heat. I don't know if this was their first tag team championship run, but it literally only lasted 24 hours.
Let me see.
I don't recall if this is their first championship run, but it literally only ran 24 hours. And then you transitioned it off to give it to the American males, who got destroyed during that match. That was my issue with it. Like I'm fine with the fact that they wanted to put the titles on them, but They did not look like champions in that match. They got destroyed. And Bagwell essentially got lucky, and that's how they won the straps. So that is one of my major gripes with how the Harlem Heat lost that match, because nothing else there, based on how the match actually went, indicated they should have lost that match.
Well, this says right here, January 14, 1995, even before they had Nitro, Saturday night, Harlem Heat defeated Stars and Stripes to win the tag titles. And Stars and Stripes was Del Wilkes and Marcus Alexander Bagwell.
Mm-hmm.
And then, let's see, what else they got?
Yeah, so what I'm looking at is they actually, their first
10-time
title
tag
reign,
champs.
their first title reign was from August of '94 to May of '95.
Okay.
So that was their first title reign, and then, well, how? Okay, so then
they dropped it before Nitro even came on.
They dropped it before Nitro came out, before that episode of Nitro. They dropped it before Nitro even hit the air, and then they got it back at Fall Brawl, and subsequently lost them to the American Males. But again, I think the biggest problem for me was not that they won the match, but how they did, because literally, like I said, they got dominated the entire match.
Yep.
They got their asses kicked. Well, again,
yep.
It doesn't matter. Podcast friend Scotty Riggs got his ass kicked for most of that match, and then, Bagwell came in and he tried to do something about it and couldn't, but then he got a counter to take care of that business. And literally, that was their only reign as that was their only reign as tag team champs. That was their only reign. So
damn, Stars and Stripes had it 2 times. Yep, Harlem Heat had it December 8th, 1994. That's when they won the tag titles. Then they lost it to the Nasty Boys in 95. Got it back in 95 from the Nasty Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Then they dropped them to
the
Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Harlem Heat September. Then they lost the next night to what we just witnessed. Then they got it back on Saturday night against, they won it back. Then they lost to Luger and Sting. Then they got it back again from Luger and Sting. Then they lost it to the Steiner brothers. And they won it back to Harlem. And Harlem Heat got it back. And then Harlem Heat lost to the Public Enemy. And then Harlem Heat won it back. Then they lost to the Outsiders. And Scott Steiner and them won it.
I can't believe they lost. I can't believe they lost to Public Enemy. That's some shit.
Let me see. Let me look into that.
Yo, you know what? This is like
that was on Nitro too.
The WCW Tag Team Championship sound like the 24/7 title.
Nah, this got range though. It's not every week. This is just, months.
Okay, I was about to say because that sounds kind of, but I don't even mean because it's just like literally the sheer. The sheer names it goes through. I think that we, and I certainly I'll be the first to admit, we forget sometimes that the WCW World Tag Team titles, WCW in general, was around for long before Monday Nitro. It was when it was TBS and all that other fun stuff, and there was where they had title reigns and there were lengthy title reigns. And then it was like kind of the Nitro era comes along, and then it's like titles are defended and lost a little more often because it's TV. But it's just crazy to think that literally in a 1 year stretch, because, we literally just looked it up, Harlem Heat held those titles 3 times in a 1 year stretch. Had a long, lengthy stretch, and then 2 other ones that was just like, okay, you win, you lose, you win, you lose. And they still lost to Public Enemy.
Harlem Heat had the tag titles for 10 times and held it for a combined of 470 days.
A little over a year.
10-time stretch, yep.
10
Steiner
times.
Brothers 7 times, 523 days.
And they're... Boom. Boom.
Minnesota Wrecking Crew 7 times, 992 days.
Yep, there you go. There you go. Yep. It harkens to a certain female who had a title reign in an opposing organization, who literally could not hold a title past title defense for like a year. She's a multi-time champ, but she doesn't even have a month worth. She literally has like a 6-month title reign, and she held that title like 4 or 5 times in that 6-month period, which meant she lost 5 times in that period.
What are you talking about, Sasha?
Like you knew it. You knew it. You knew it. You knew it.
Yeah.
Where every time she won the title, you turn right around and she lost it. The very next time it was like.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
But yeah.
But that doesn't matter. Harlem Heat, they definitely matter, and
yep.
We're gonna see what happens next week.
This episode didn't necessarily matter though. This episode was weak.
If you just want to see some funny segments, check out Hulk Hogan and the Monster Truck segment. That's pretty funny. You want to see a decent match? Check out Brian Pillman and Ric Flair. That's all I can really say.
Yeah.
For episode 3 of the Nitro Podcast.
You want to see something that makes no sense? Look at that segment of Macho Man on the beach, because why are there 2 men out there in full wrestling gear?
Yes. That didn't make any sense either. So. All right. Well, BDC. That's about it for episode 3.
Yep.
Next week we're gonna bring episode 4, and
where is episode 4 coming from next week?
I didn't even look that up yet. Let me see.
We should.
Let me see.
Episode 4.
Where we at? We are at.
Yep, aired. It is going to be in Florence, South Carolina.
There you go, South
at
Carolina.
The Florence Civic Center.
All right.
And it has the nerve to have the capacity for the Florence Civic Center. 5,000.
It's all the local bumpkins in there. So, all right, it's gonna be pretty interesting next week.
Yep, and
so Alex Wright and Disco Inferno, Kurosawa, Sergeant Craig Pittman, Kevin Sullivan, and Macho Man, and Meng, and Lex Luger.
And we will be talking about the dark matches next week too.
We definitely will.
We will be talking about the dark matches next week.
Oh, man. Well, all right, then. Well, I'm the Notorious One. I am Dom. I'm here, my man, from BDC all the way in Delaware. And we will see you next time. Boom.